Hello, friends. Welcome to the Cinemondo podcast. I love that intro. You shot that footage, right, at Universal Backlot?
Yes, I did. I walked around and purposely shot all this moving footage of the lot, which
because
I love.
it is, to me, that is what it is about. You know, when I spent so much of my life working in that very lot right there, that row of golf carts to me just screams film and television
production. I know.
production.
It's funny to see like a little golf cart parking lot, basically. All at the entrance, they all have to line up there, and that's where you get them all.
The
charge up and
lifeblood
get gas.
film production is a golf cart. Yeah.
So funny. I know. I really wanted to drive one. I only got to drive a couple times, but it was fun. I mostly wanted the exercise, so I liked walking around. And then you can really slow down and look at stuff.
Universal, I did some long walks at Universal.
I did a lot of walking. Yeah.
Nice. Uphill. I remember when I was working there, they had Segways for a little while until people started having, Segway races and people were riding them off loading docks and,
oh boy,
it's like, okay, no more.
That's why we can't have nice things.
Taking your toys away. No more Segways. Anyway.
No more Segways. All right. So, I was a huge fan of this game. I loved playing Last of Us. I still consider it one of my favorite games ever because it's one of the rare ones where you get emotionally involved in the characters.
Oh,
mostly you're just shooting things and things are happening and you're
right.
It's like you're your own character, but you're not necessarily emotionally invested in your character. It's something that a means to an end, basically. But in this game, you get to be with these characters and play with these characters and add the characters, and they were important and they mattered, and there was sort of this heart in the game that is so rare in gaming. So that's one of the reasons I was very excited about this. And I thought the casting was really good. So I was very, very hopeful for this series.
Yeah. And I'm not a gamer. I didn't even know it was based on a game until until I think after I saw the first episode. And of course, what we're talking about is
The Last of Us.
The Last of Us, which is the hot new show right now on Netflix. And the cast is Pedro Pascal, the guy that plays the Mandalorian.
Man, that guy is in so many good shows. He was in Game of Thrones. He killed it in that, and he was like a highlight. Always, I hated how he ended. And then he's in the Mandalorian.
Yeah,
so great. Now he's in this. Like the guy has a great agent or something because he picks all the best stuff.
Well, he's cool. He's a good actor. He looks good on camera. He's dark and kind of. He's brooding, moody. He's got more going on behind his eyes. He's one of those kind of actors that you believe.
And he's super hot.
And young Bella Ramsey, who is also like too young to be as worldly and cool as she is. I normally kid actors are kind of cringy for me in a lot of cases. I'm like, oh no, kids. I don't know. It's gonna be
oh no, kids.
It's gonna be one of those things where another example of Pedro Pascal going around with a baby Yoda type thing.
Yeah, it's like another sidekick.
She's going to be cute and they're going to be like daddy and daughter and there's going to be these lovey scenes and all, but it's like, nah, she's not like that. She's kind of she's a bit of a jackass at first, and then you start liking her, and then you realize what's going on, and he's a bit of a jackass as well. But
I feel like in an apocalypse like this, because we get to it opens on their normal life. Like he has a daughter. He's taking care of their, having, it's kind of this family dinner idea. You kind of get a little bit invested in their family and how she's going to school and she's taking care of, I don't know, was her grandmother but she, she's
her neighbor that she just
was taking care of the neighbor, and she was really cute. It was not Bella Ramsey. It was another actress who was also great.
She was really good, and you're thinking, wow, this, she's really a good kid actor.
I know. I was like, wow, I wish she was in this because she was really cool and very charismatic, and you were with her from the second you saw her. You really loved her. So when and of course these are gonna be spoiler reviews because not only is this a game where if you haven't played it, you won't know what's gonna happen, but I know what's gonna happen. So,
Right.
but if they follow it, which I assume they will, but the daughter in the opening scene is not necessarily the character we're going to follow throughout the show because we've seen the
Right.
key art, right? I
Yes.
mean, we see like Bella Ramsey
That's the
with
thing.
Burk and stuff, right?
Yeah, and it's
So
not her.
yeah, I know. So we're seeing it, and it's a little confusing because you're like, well, not sure why she's in this, and then you realize, oh,
Yeah.
and it was just as shocking in the game because when you're playing the game, you assume you're not knowing anything yet. You assume
Right.
this character because you're playing the character that she's going to be your main character, and then when that happens, it's kind of like really jolting. Like what? Like it was shocking when she dies.
Oh.
Then we flash forward to the inevitable apocalypse because it all happened. We got to see the initial like chaos that's happening, which kind of reminded me of the opening to Dawn of the Dead remake, where they had
Yeah.
the overhead scene and you see her, driving. There's all this stuff, flying, people crashing cars, things are on fire, people are. It had that same vibe, but you're more deep in it instead of overhead. So you had a great like escape scene where they're trying to drive and get out of there, and they're
Yeah.
trying to get. That was a spectacular scene, great opening scene, and again, you're with him and his daughter, and then things go awry.
I like it when they do things from the point of view of the characters in the show where you kind of
Mhm.
experience this, like, what the
Yeah,
hell is going on? And
yeah,
things are happening, and like you hear these jets flying over. It's like, what? And that I think can be really effective. I've seen that a few
mhm,
other times in other things, but it was done really nicely in this where the young girl, his daughter,
yeah,
is just going through her normal life and things are just a little bit askew and weird,
yeah,
and then suddenly there's a dead person, there's a guy
yeah,
who's like, and there's
yeah.
and this grandma that she was kind of helping take care of next door has become a monster,
I like how they
It's
showed
like,
it too in the background. Like you
yeah,
see her in the foreground, in the background, she's like, and then when she turns around, she acts normal again. Very, very
and you
creepy.
get
Really great,
that
very subtle
feeling.
reveals.
Yeah, and you get that feeling that the actress must, I mean, that the character must be having of like, "What am I seeing? How do I
Yeah.
process this? What happened?"
Yeah. Because I mean,
And
we hear sirens all the time. I mean, we live
yeah.
in LA, so we hear
Yeah.
you see helicopters. I see fighter jets and shit flying over my house. I'm always like, that's interesting. Wonder where they're going.
It's stealth bombers on New Year's Day that were
Oh, I
we
know.
live near the, Rose Bowl parade, so we see the
Mm.
stealth fighters flying over our house.
So then you think if that was happening, but then it happened a little too often, you'd be like, huh, what's something? But it still would feel so unreal to have something like this starting to unravel, especially the way this does. I thought was very realistic, where all of a sudden you're like, we
Yeah,
got to get out of here. And you just want to jump in your car and get out because you think it's going to be in your town only, that you got to get out of your town. Little do you know it's happening everywhere. Right.
and you just have to drive across a field, because
Oh,
there's
and they
co
had real
yeah,
quick, they had that opening scene with the scientists being interviewed, which I thought was hilarious. You have the really snarky interviewer who's like,
right.
"So, pandemic," and they kind of brought it around to the pandemic, like pandemic's our big threat. And then the guy's like, "Nope, I think it's fungus," and everybody just laughs at him.
Yeah,
And then he turns out, yeah, it was fungus. It's a very,
yeah.
very aggressive type of fungus that turns you basically into a mushroom. It's basically what it's
Well,
all about.
it's an explanation that we haven't had before, which is interesting because I think
It
in
is.
the original, what's considered to be the original zombie movie,
Mhm.
unless you think about the earlier ones like Last Man on Earth
Right.
and Omega Man and things like that.
Mhm.
But the first of the sort of modern zombie film is George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, which there's a part in there where they say
Yeah.
something, it's like an
Yeah.
offhand remark about a meteor, right?
Right.
So some kind of thing that came on a meteor or something. But you don't a lot of times get an explanation. Like in Walking Dead, we never
Yeah.
got an explanation for why it happened. It just happened. But
Yeah.
this one has a really interesting explanation with this fungal thing,
Yeah.
which you've read about. I mean, the thing is, if you surf the news and you get your aggregated news, every once in a while a story will pop up, a nature story
Mhm.
that's like, wow, nature, you scary kind of thing. That's the comment that people, and so, and what it is with the fungus is that there's this kind of fungus that will attack an ant or a bug of some kind
Mhm.
and get into their brain and then start driving them like a vehicle. And
Yeah.
it will make them do this and that. It'll make them do certain things that help the fungus. And that is
Yeah.
such a creepy
Like a
idea. The
parasite.
insect world is so creepy. It's
Mhm.
like a parasite that not only just feeds off of you, but it actually takes over your brain and makes you
Right.
do certain behaviors. So the applying that to humans is a great idea. It's a the idea of a fungus, is kind of a new idea, unless you think about something like that. Attack of the Mushroom
Yeah, that's right.
People, the Toho film,
Russian people. That's right.
yeah, which I love this movie. If you get a chance to see it, it's a good one. Attack of the Mushroom People. It's
That's right. If
basically,
you want more of Last of
yeah,
Us after you're done, and you can watch that movie, get some more of it.
it's got
So,
a
but the
creepy vibe to it.
That's right.
Really
And the
cool
thing
movie.
about this too is people are not dead. This is like a zombie movie with people. They're not dead. They're actually alive, and
Yeah,
they're like you said, infested. So that's when they kind of say, "Are they alive?" And because it looks like they're kind of laying dormant. Like there's a lot of times that they'll have this pile of people lined up, and then you're like,
yeah,
"Are they
and they
alive?"
just
And
squirm
I like how
around
you can kind of see just a little bit of movement. It's super creepy looking. This big
when
overhead where you
the
see
shadow goes
all
across
these
them or
people laying.
something.
Yeah, so they'll just lay around for a while until they have something they need to do, and they, some kind of threat or food or a target. So
I
it's super
interpreted
creepy.
that I thought that was that they get some energy from sunlight, like plants, so when the sun there was like a shadow moving across, like a cloud shadow, and they were still, and then when the cloud shadow moved and the sunlight hit them, they started squirming around, and
I don't
it's
remember that from maybe from the game. I know that they're all interconnected through that. They talked about that underground kind of.
yes,
So when one is hearing or feeling something over here, it's going to awaken them and activate them from like miles away because
like a
they
root.
have those little creepy tendrils that are coming out of their mouths. They got
Yeah,
this root system. So I think it's mostly about threat, and then when they get activated through that underground network, it can you cannot you can't activate or threaten someone in one area and not expect more to start coming because they're all going to know about it. It's sort of like
and
this
it
hive
seems to
mind
me
in a
like
way.
you can't, like with normal zombie movies, they always say, go for the head," but
Yeah.
in this one, they're shooting them and they still come, they shoot them in the
Yeah.
head, and it's almost like the whole body is a fungus.
Oh,
Like,
so
you have to
yeah.
shoot it enough to where the body can't continue to come after you. You have to
Yeah, you
really
have
shoot
to
it a
really
lot.
destroy the brain a lot because
Yeah,
it needs to activate. So that's really interesting. And then you also need to worry about spores. And that's I don't know if
right.
they've really explored that yet, but spores are going to be happening soon. I think they kind of hinted
Ah,
that there's some stuff in the air. But
right,
now
they
and I remember that in the game when you'd see one of these I mean, we haven't even seen the worst of these things.
right,
Super big, globy, gross mushroom monsters. When you'd shoot them, you would have to be really careful because spores could touch you and get in. Yeah, that wouldn't be good. So
oh,
that's going to be happening where not even distance is almost still a problem. So you really have to be really careful, and you can't even. You're better off not shooting them and just trying to get around them, but they will not stop. So it becomes that.
yeah,
But it's funny that game just made me want. I want to get in there and shoot something.
but
Get
I'm
in there.
predicting that ultimately there is some kind of a weakness, that there's something, I guess, there's always something like loud noises, or, Slim Whitman music, or
Mm.
or,
Yeah, music.
they
Yeah,
they
exactly.
don't like fire, or you can defeat them with a toothpick, or there's like
Yeah,
always some kind of a thing that somebody discovers, but I don't
it's
know,
true.
maybe that's just a maybe it
And,
has to.
I think
Also, one of
fire
the
is the big one because it destroys everything. Like, it gets the
yeah,
spores, it gets the area, it destroys the network. Like, you have to do complete, literally scorched earth to get rid of these things.
and
I
that's
don't know
why the
how they're gonna do it in
scientists
here, but yeah.
in second episode, you had the scientist, and she basically says, they were like, what can we do? Is there a vaccine? And she's like, bomb the cities.
Yep.
Like,
Destroy the city. I love
she
that too, where they
understood.
kinda had it
Yeah,
the initial like, I like the little intros of how it started, and they have
yeah,
the people going, "Where did this fungus come from? Where," you're like, "This is like a really fat what?" And then when she found out what it was, she's like, "We're fucked. We're just fucked."
yeah.
And you
It's
are in that game.
like a bread factory or something, like a
Yeah.
like flour or
Oh,
something, a flour
oh, yeah.
factory in India,
So bad. Yeah, and then fungus.
and
Yikes.
that's apparently
So
where fungus can grow in flour.
yeah. So we have Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey, who's actually 19, not 14, but she looks very young, so it would totally works. And I like that she just wants to stab everything. Like, she's got her knife, and she keeps
Yeah,
jumping for her knife, and they're like, "Stop! Put the knife away!" So I
right.
thought it was funny. She wants to get involved. Like, she's a badass. Her trick is that when she gets bit by these things, she doesn't turn into one. And so they're like, how is this possible? So they want to get her to the CDC to see if they can figure out a vaccine or some kind of cure because she's the only one that they know of so far that doesn't react to the bites. Because usually when you get bit, you're turning into one of these crazy things just in minutes. So you got to work
Yeah.
fast. And that's
So
one
it's
of the reasons it spreads so fast.
kind of a Children of Men kind of a thing too, with the the woman where it was like a man and a woman. He's trying to get her out because she's the only person who has the answer to their problems.
Yeah, and she
She's
the only one that could give birth in that one.
yeah. So it's
That
got
wasn't
kind of
as
that
apocalyptic, but that was more population reproduction based. But yeah, I did not
right.
like that movie, so I don't like to compare it to anything. But
I liked it. I thought it was
I did
cool.
not like it.
It had a King Crimson song in it, which I thought was beautifully used in a really cool scene
Yeah, there is that one cool scene.
in the
Um,
art gallery. Like, what are you saving the art? They've got like Michelangelo's David in there. Like, what happens? Most people start dying, and like
Mhm.
save the art. I love that.
Yeah,
Love
that
that
was really
concept.
cool. That was cool. So
But
we
this
ended up
one,
with. Go ahead.
we're 2 episodes in, right?
Yeah, we're
So
doing 1 and 2. So the setup we had setup 1, where we got we introduced to the characters. The characters are on a mission. They decide to take her out. So we Anna Torv, Pedro Pascal, and Bella Ramsey head out. They're gonna take her out on this illicit mission, which wasn't really sanctioned. That they're kind of doing. You're not allowed. You're not supposed to be doing any of these things. They're gonna do it anyway. Everyone in this is a criminal, by the way. It's sort of allowed. Like everyone's a scammer because why not? It's the end of
and
the
there was
world.
like this rebel group, there's like the rebels, the underground
Yeah,
hiding, their hideout, and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And they're sort of rebelling against this sort of oppressive. It's almost like the people who imagine themselves to be these rebels who are rebelling against wearing a mask during the pandemic or something.
Mhm.
And you're thinking, okay, these
Yeah.
are people that are they're not that stupid though. They're not saying there is no pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kinda
There's
obvious now that there is one.
yeah, they're unlike our idiots where they're like there is no pandemic and then they drop dead, because
Vaccines don't work.
right
Yeah.
there on their right-wing podcast. And anyway,
Anyway.
these are people who are rebelling against this all the militarization of the pandemic, and all this
Exactly.
other stuff that's happening like
Yeah.
rationing and whatever. And
Yeah, they keep trying, kinda like The Walking Dead, which you can't help but compare it to that because it's sort of
right.
about everybody sets up their own governments, they set up their own law enforcement. It's sort of tenuous because
Yeah.
who's really no one's really getting paid, so, I mean, there's, like, payment in forms of, like, food or
Right.
supplies, but it's not they don't have a great system, so it's very ripe for corruption, so we had that, and that also is in The Walking Dead, but we have that too, so it was actually kind of a relief to finally get out of that, like, the opening
Yeah.
scene,
I know.
it felt a little bit too Walking Dead, even though it's a lot better produced, like, it looks amazing, it's just got better cinematography, better sets, it just doesn't have that samey same look that Walking Dead ended up having,
They're
but
in cities. Yeah, I love seeing
I couldn't wait
cities.
for
And
the exploration to begin because
yeah.
I love games that are about exploration, so them going out
Yeah.
into the city is what I really was craving, and so now in episode 2, we started getting out into that, where they're trying to track down a
Yeah.
battery because they need a car to, get Bella to the, or not Bella. Yeah, Bella. Is it? Shit.
Well, that's the actress's name, but I can't remember
Ellie.
her.
Bella
Ellie,
and
that's
Ellie are very similar. They're trying to get Ellie, who originally in the game looked exactly like Ellen Page, and they actually get in some trouble, and they had to change it
oh.
because she looked so much like Ellen Page. Who
Oh.
is now Elliot Page, but at the time, she was looking like
Right.
Ellen Page. But so
Yeah,
they
I
had to
do
change it a
remember
little bit.
seeing that and thinking that she looked like someone. Yeah, I remember that
So much like
seeing
it.
it and think, wow, is this based on yeah,
Yeah. So we can maybe
that's
show.
interesting. So
Yeah,
yeah, so but Bella Ramsey is like perfect casting for this. She's such an
really good.
apocalypse kid. And the thing is they talk about there's a couple times in here. I think when it cuts from the original pre-pandemic story and
Mhm.
then the horrible thing happens and then it says what is it? How many years later? It says is it 17 years later
I
some
think so, 'cause he looks a lot older. He's gray in his hair and everything now.
but it's still what's interesting is it's still in our time. It's an alternate timeline
Yeah.
because I think it takes place in like 2012 or something, right? Or
That
something
I
like that
don't
because it
remember.
starts off in 2007 or 2003 or something like that.
Right.
And then that's when the pandemic starts in 2003. So we're going into this, apocalypse that never happened, which is kind of cool. I like
Yeah,
the
that is
idea that
cool.
we're not like, and that way they sort of can have our present day technology and things without having to make it like this is a pandemic that is going to happen in the
That's true.
future,
Yeah.
where they would have to make special props with the technology.
Mhm.
They're just using present day technology in a
Right.
separate situation, if that makes
And there
any
really
sense.
isn't any technology now because everything's
Right.
gone. So in a way, they've reverted back to ground zero where we don't have phones, we don't have. So there's
The
a
big
lot there.
quest is to get a battery.
Yeah, and I loved the idea of the coding with the songs. They originally have like
Yeah.
the only way they could communicate is over the radio. They had the radio signal. So he had a friend that he had escaped with who they separated. So then he was able to kind of communicate with him. So he was sending him every day, he'd send him a song. And depending on the year of the song, it would depend on what the situation was where he was. So
Right.
his initial plan, Joel's initial plan is to get Ellie to this new area where his friend is. But right as they leave, the guy plays the song that's like, don't come, it's a clusterfuck. So
Yeah.
they didn't hear this song, so we know they're heading into total chaos. But I love
Yeah.
that last shot in episode 2. The buildings all leaning, looked really cool. The big city. I love this idea because this is the game. The game is like how
Yeah.
you get into areas, how do you get up to the top of buildings to get supplies, like all these cool little
Oh,
weird. And they
okay.
showed a little bit of that where they went through a door and they clawed up through the walls and they went in through this ladder.
And they
There's a
go
lot of that
across
going on.
the wood
Yes, a lot of
bridge
that.
across
Oh
the
my god,
buildings.
I fell
Yeah.
off of those so many times. Um, but it's so hard. But I love the exploration aspect, so I'm really excited that they're going out into the wilderness in a way now because that's the main thrust of the game, and that's when it starts getting really good.
Yeah, and
And it's just him and her at that point.
production design is really beautiful.
It really is.
The
They did a
city,
great
the way
job.
that nature takes over the city so quickly. People
Mhm.
don't realize how quickly that would happen, but it's
Yeah,
there's a few books and studies that have been done on that kind of thing. Like what would happen if humans disappeared? What would happen to the buildings and things? And there's so much constant maintenance going on to buildings that we forget about. They repaint them every couple of years
yeah,
and they redo
yeah,
this and they redo that. And even just things like termite treatments and what if you stop that,
yeah,
suddenly nature takes it back, and
yeah.
it's
I love
interesting.
that.
Yeah. Interesting that it seems I think some people might watch this and say, it looks like 100 years in the future, but actually it's like, nah, I think things would happen. There's no more municipal maintenance, so there'd be flooding and nothing to do
Yeah.
about it. It just water
Water
would
is the
sit there.
biggest threat. Water is
Yeah.
the biggest threat because it invades everything. It brings in the fungus. It brings in, and then it waters the
Yeah.
plants. Everything takes over. But good. So that's what would be nice is nature taking over eventually. But this was
Yeah.
produced by Craig Mazin, who also did
Yeah.
Chernobyl. So it has that
Right.
great. He has that great dark kind of scientific based writing and production value that I think is going to bring a little extra level of smart to this, which
Yeah.
it's already smart, but it was a little bit more basic, like apocalyptic. I think he's bringing in not only a little bit of heart, but he's bringing in a little more of that realistic. What would realistically be happening if this was going on? There's a little bit more of that science in there, which I like, and there's also a little bit of hope. Like unlike Walking Dead, which was like just darker and darker, and it was just beyond. Everything was shit, and you couldn't trust
Yeah.
anybody. The zombies were the least of your problems. The people suck, and other than that, you felt like it was just going to end and everyone is a zombie. I mean, that's eventually how it has to end, right? So,
Yeah.
Last of Us seems like it has a little bit more hope because she's immune. We have a mission. We can get somewhere and save the world. That's sort of the main idea. Now, granted, there is a Last of Us 2 game, and I don't know how far they're going to go into that, but I started that game and I hated it so much because some plot points happened that I just could not deal with. So I went, nope, not
Oh
playing this.
no.
I know. So I'm like, I don't like it. So I might have to go back, but I don't know how the second game ends because I just couldn't deal with it at all. It was very, very
Wow.
heartbreaking and terrible. So, but this one I think is probably going to concentrate probably on the first game, which is it's very, very capsulized. Like you feel like there's sort of an ending in the game, but there's one
Okay.
scene, and I hope they do justice to this. It's in the game. It's so great. They're in this big city, and you've seen all this shit. You're in these destruction and mushroom people everywhere, and it's just so gross. They get up to the top of the skyscraper, and they're looking out, and they just see this blue sky. It's gorgeous. You see this
Oh.
apocalypse, but then you see some giraffes slowly going by, just nature like coming by, and it was the most magical because you've seen so much terrible stuff, and to see something so beautiful and so natural and so familiar, it was like, oh my god. And you could feel the characters, and I get goosebumps thinking about filling up with like, oh my god, we can do this. It was so
I saw
good. And
that. I saw a scene
oh,
from the game where he's like petting a giraffe. It comes up to a building and he's like petting it,
so
and it's like
good.
it's
Oh
okay,
my
you can.
god, so
So it's
great.
in a way, it's kind of a visual idea that we've
Mhm.
seen before a little bit. Maybe 12 Monkeys did something like that, where
Yeah,
you see the
animals take over.
juxtaposition of wild animals in the city, which
Yeah.
is kind of jarring,
It is.
But
But, you're not seeing anything beautiful at all in this game. It's all
right,
ugly. So I hope they keep it to that and they don't bring too much of it, because it's like the sun breaking through the clouds. When you see that happen, it's so needed and such a huge
yeah,
relief. And I feel like if they can bring that like into probably the second to last episode, that would be the time, because at that
right.
point you're gonna be so saturated with death and destruction and ugliness and rot that when you see that, you're like, oh, we just might pull this off.
Well, that's the
Maybe.
thing. That's the thing. That's the reason I stopped watching Walking Dead, was because it was just dark and
Mhm,
darker
mhm,
and
mhm.
darker and darker.
It was.
And it was almost like an assault on the viewer. It's almost like, what can we do to make you disgusted or to make you depressed, and
Yeah.
to pull the rug out from under lovable, likable characters, and to degrade them, to degrade their
Mhm.
memory, like they're holding up his severed head. It's like, here's somebody
Yeah.
that you spent seasons, struggling with, and it's like, ha ha. And I got the feeling that I was being messed with when I was watching
Mhm.
that show. And this one, I watched the first 2 episodes is all we've got so far, but
Yeah.
it's a bit dark. I remember the first episode, when his daughter
Mhm.
in her
Yeah.
big scene, I thought, this is
Mhm.
this is horrible. Like, how is this
Yeah.
guy gonna be, I mean, how does his life get redeemed after that? He's lost
Mhm.
the only important, person in his life, and you
Yeah.
can't. It's like, I always remember on Conan O'Brien when they had some of the Walking Dead cast on the show, and
Mhm.
Conan was being funny. He asked one of the cast members, "So is Walking Dead gonna have a happy ending?" And she was like, "No,
No.
it can't.
No.
How
No way.
could
And
it?"
what's a happy ending? Because I feel
Yeah,
like humans being wiped out, I
I
mean,
know.
it's kind of their own fault anyway that this all started. So I feel like if the planet's taken over and humans are gone, then that's not necessarily a bad ending.
Well, you remember that movie Wall-E,
Mhm.
the Pixar movie
Yeah.
where the humans have left the Earth, and
And they're
they because
disgusting.
there's no life on the Earth, and I thought, it's like, well, that's maybe, in one scenario, that might be what
Mhm.
happens, where they just leave it
Yeah.
all behind. But then at the end of the movie, I think it was supposed to be uplifting and cool that Wally finds this little plant growing, right? It's like,
Mhm.
wow, the planet still has life. And then somehow the people find out about it, and they're like, oh, great, let's go back. So it's like,
Ugh, go back and ruin it again.
and that was supposed to
Yeah.
be this happy ending. It was uplifting, like, yay, humans get to come back to Earth because there's one little plant there that they're going to
No.
immediately destroy and fight over. And,
Mhm.
so it's, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I don't dislike humankind because I'm sort of a member of it,
I just
but
feel like we kinda get what we deserve. If we don't wanna take care of the
in some
planet, if
ways
we
we do.
wanna don't
Yeah.
wanna take, precautions against disease or viruses, if we wanna, exploit animals and pollute and destroy, it's kind of our it's we kinda did it to ourselves. So, it's hard to feel sorry
Yeah.
for mankind when we can't seem to control our own worst impulses.
But there
But
are people who do
there
work
are
on
that's what
things
this
to
this
try
show is
to,
about. This is what
yeah.
this game is about, is that there is good in people and that we can
Yeah.
maybe save the world if we're good, and so I hope.
Maybe
But,
there's a way to
that's
work
why part
together.
2 ruined it for me. That's why part 2
Oh,
ruined it for
okay.
me. But, well, I'm gonna continue part 2. I guess I have to. Now I kinda want to. But anyway, so we've gone on a lot because there's a lot to talk about. It brings up a lot of things like, what would I do? It brings up, like, how will the world end? What would happen if this was going on? Like, you get all in your head, like, would you survive? Would you be able to handle it? I don't think I would. I think I would just collapse. I don't know what I would do.
I
But it's
always
like,
feel like I'd be okay. I think I'd be pretty good. I'm pretty resourceful. I think I'd be
yeah,
able
but you'd have
to.
to be a criminal and be gross and aggressive and just like I feel like those are the people that survive. So it
Yeah,
would
and
be
then those situations come up where you have to use a gun and all that kind of stuff. I don't know,
yeah.
but I don't think. But I think as far as like
Maybe
figuring
I
out
would.
how to,
Survival's strong
Because I
impulse.
remember watching Walking Dead, and my whole thing was because I spent decades as a prop guy, so I know how to
Mhm,
build things. I know how to work a workshop and all that kind of
mhm.
stuff. I'm pretty resourceful because I worked on low budget things, and I had to dumpster dive for props, as we used to call it. So I know how to build stuff out of garbage, basically, because of shows I worked on. And I remember watching Walking Dead and thinking, you know what, they could do this and this and this and this. And I was thinking, God, there's ways that you could get rid of a whole bunch of zombies all at once. And I
Yeah.
started thinking of plans that would have been, they should have at least done it on the show.
Maybe they did after you stopped watching.
Yeah, I don't know. Too late though.
Too late. Like I said, I think I watched the last episode. I don't remember because everything would look so much the same and the plots are the same. And you run into a new city and then you take over and you ruin the whole thing. And then what's going to happen now? Are we going to survive? I don't even remember if I watched the finale, the series finale. I
Of
don't
of
know if I
Walking
did.
Dead.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
I
I
think I
forgot.
did. I think I did, but there is a new one coming out. There's a spinoff coming out. So it'll be
Well,
interesting to see if they learn anything from Last of Us because it takes place in New York. And it's gonna be
I
Negan
remember
and Maggie.
I remember losing it when they were just like sort of gleefully, horribly executing members of the cast in this way that was like that just sort of took that person's entire story arc, their character arc, and threw it in the trash. It was almost
But
like
at
they
the
were
same time, to be fair,
disrespectful to their characters. I don't
I feel
know.
like that character totally hit a dead end. I feel like that character, you're talking about Glenn and Maggie, their character arc was
Before
completely
that,
done and boring,
yeah.
and I was just like, I could not deal with it. So, are you talking about a different character getting killed?
There was just I don't I'd have to really look into it, but it was the thing where they were making people lean over a trough and they were just cutting their necks
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah.
slaughtering animals, and
But they didn't kill
it
any main
just
characters during that.
I know, but it was just that
Oh,
idea of
yeah.
making you watch this whole row of people being
Yeah.
executed, and I was like, they're messing with me. This is mean-spirited. There's no
Yeah, but
point to this scene other than to be to
But
be
you know what I thought the
disturbing,
point
and
was? They were showing how people were being treated like cattle. They're being treating
yeah,
people the way we treat cattle, which is disgusting and horrible, and we shouldn't be
yeah,
doing it. So it's like if you're starving and there's nothing to eat, you're gonna treat people like cattle because they're protein. I thought that was an interesting analogy, so I went with it. It wasn't fun to
yeah,
watch because it's not supposed to be fun because we treat animals like shit. That's all I'm saying. I'm
yeah.
on my soapbox today.
I think I
So
just
that's
got
what I
where
got
I was
with it.
like a little bit
It's
felt like a
unpleasant.
little bit
It was
slapped
unpleasant.
in the face by a TV show, and
It is The Walking Dead. But I
yeah,
think this one could be they're still gonna have moments like that because it's all about, the setting up the little enclaves of people, communities and how they're
yeah,
surviving in individual ways. And, Joel and Ellie are coming into this and everybody's like, "Can we trust them? What's their deal?" And then you have to explain over and over again that Ellie is immune to the
right,
the fungus and that we need to get her to the next step. But, there's people that wanna exploit that. There's people that are like, "Hey, she's immune. We gotta figure this out." There's all kinds of different, levels to the show. So I'm very excited for episode 3, and we're gonna start trying to review it a little more often. We're gonna keep
yeah.
going.
This is
Right?
just our first dip into The Last of Us. Where we're gonna we
Right.
cover the first 2 episodes. We wanted to see if we liked it, right?
Yep, we like it,
And so we go
and we're
two
all
episodes
watching it,
in.
which is
We're like,
rare.
yeah, let's do a show about it.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So
Alright.
next time
Alright.
we'll do episode 3, and we'll go from
Yeah.
there.
So you guys let us know what you think of Last of Us. Did you play the game? How do you think it compares? Do you like Pedro Pascal as Joel? Do you like Bella Ramsey as Ellie? Let us know what you think about anything and everything about Last of Us.
Yeah, and I guess people who played the game, let's don't do too many spoilers in the
Yeah,
comments if possible,
yeah. Yeah,
and
don't spoil it.
because I've never played the game, so I don't know what happens,
You
and
should, it's
which this
so good.
maybe I'll try after or something afterwards
Yeah.
because
After?
like after I see it,
So
but
you'll
then
know what's coming?
I'll know all the tricks, right? I'll know how to
You
win
will
the
not.
game.
It'll
I'll
still
just
be fucking
zoom
hard as
right
hell.
through it,
No, it's
like
gonna be hard as hell. It was such a hard game.
like watching a Super Mario playthrough on YouTube.
Not
Suddenly
as hard as
I'll
Dark
know
Souls. God, I love those.
I'll
Not as
know
hard as Dark
exactly
Souls
which
game.
thing to jump over and which thing to
Exactly.
bonk my head
What I
into, and
need is that kind of a mushroom.
yes,
All right,
the
you guys.
Super Mario mushroom people.
Okay, we're de-escalating.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye, everybody.